Episode 5 of the Ahsoka show is here, and oh my goodness, just give Dave Filoni the keys to the kingdom. There's only one word to describe that episode, and that is perfection.
Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
The storytelling, the cinematography, Hayden Christensen's performance, perfection. However, this all happened so fast, and you might have missed some of the crazy details that prove why Star Wars needs to be in the hands of the people who understand the galaxy far, far away. So obviously, spoiler alert for episode 5 of the Ahsoka show. Don't forget to rate this episode out of 10 in the comments below, smash a like on this video, and let's break this all down. This episode was titled Shadow Warrior. Now this title, like most of the other titles for this series, has multiple meanings. The more obvious one being Anakin Skywalker being referred to as the Shadow Warrior. Depending on how you interpret this whole World Between Worlds sequence, Anakin is just a Shadow Warrior. Now the episode begins on Cetos, and we see Hera Syndulla looking for Ahsoka and Sabine. They're obviously not here, but if they were dead, there would be bodies. But Hera hears a sound behind one of the rocks in the ruins. It's Hu Yang looking down at the water with Sabine's helmet in his hands. I never thought I'd say this, but you can actually feel the emotion in the droid as he tells Hera Syndulla that he told them to stay together. We then see what we've all been waiting for, the World Between Worlds with Anakin standing across from Ahsoka. Ahsoka says he looks the same, and Anakin says that she looks old. Ahsoka looks around confused. She's been to the World Between Worlds before, but she doesn't know why she's there. She doesn't remember the fight between her and Baylan at the end of the last episode. Anakin tells her that she lost a fight, and let's just pause for a second here. Can we take a minute, just a second, to appreciate how amazing Hayden Christensen looks and acts in this episode? The deepfake technology, for everybody who was worried about it not looking good enough, it looks incredible. And Hayden Christensen himself still knows how to frickin' wield a lightsaber. But Ahsoka begins to remember that she lost to Baylan's skull. Anakin tells Ahsoka that he's here to finish her training. Ahsoka asks what the lesson is, and Anakin replies with to live or to die. Now, there are many different ways that you can interpret this whole World Between Worlds sequence. It is Anakin in the afterlife training Ahsoka one last time, but it's not the lesson you think. This is not Anakin just trying to kill Ahsoka. Now, there are many ways that you can interpret this scene, but I see it as Anakin realizing that in the afterlife, what he had trained Ahsoka was not the right thing. Ahsoka grew up in the Clone Wars. The only thing she really knew was war. But that's not what the Jedi are supposed to be. They are supposed to be the keepers of peace, not generals in a war, which Anakin Skywalker was. Ahsoka says, "I won't fight you," very similar to the way Obi-Wan Kenobi does on Mustafar, and Anakin says, "I've heard that before," as he comes at her with his lightsaber, starting one of very many lightsaber duels between Ahsoka and Anakin in this episode. And like I said earlier, Hayden Christensen still knows how to wield a frickin' lightsaber. We then cut back to the real world with Jacen Syndulla, Hera Syndulla, Hu Yang, and Chopper still looking for any sign of life from Sabine and Ahsoka. Hu Yang is trying to look at the destroyed map that we saw Baylan Skoll stick his lightsaber through at the end of the last episode to see if there's any clues. But this map is destroyed because, as Baylan intended, no one will be following them. Hera and Hu Yang get interrupted by Carson Teva, who comes over and says, "We are overdue at HQ, and Senator Organa can only hold them off for so long." Yes, that's the same Organa that is Princess Leia. Now, this is the first time she has been mentioned in relation to her role in the New Republic, and I do think we could possibly even see Leia Organa in this show, seeing how this episode ends with Hera Syndulla on her way back to Coruscant. Jacen interrupts and says that he hears something in the water. He can't explain it, but he feels Ahsoka out there and tells his mom to listen to the waves. Hera doesn't hear anything at first, but Jacen says it sounds like lightsabers. Hera Syndulla closes her eyes and hears the lightsabers as well. Now, this again is very interesting. Hera Syndulla is not force sensitive. How is she able to hear the lightsabers as well? Well, the force does flow through all things, and the World Between Worlds really has no limits. Hera tells Carson to get the X-Wings and start flying low above the water. We then go back to the World Between Worlds where Ahsoka and Anakin are still fighting. What's interesting about the World Between Worlds in this show versus the one that Ezra Bridger enters in season 4 of Rebels is there's no portals. However, Ahsoka is backed into a dead end on one of the paths as Anakin cuts the bridge from underneath her feet. Ahsoka begins to fall into clouds until we can no longer see her. We begin to hear a battle happening around her as clone troopers run out from the smoke. We see a younger version of Ahsoka Tano being played by Ariana Greenblatt. What a great name, and this is clearly at the beginning of the Clone Wars. You can tell by Ahsoka's outfit, which is the same as the first 3 seasons of the Clone Wars animated series. You then see Anakin run out of the smoke with his lightsaber out in his iconic Clone Wars armor. And if you're a Clone Wars fan, we've been waiting years for this one. As Ahsoka is lost as she asks Anakin if this is really the Clone Wars, and Anakin turns around and says, "Of course it is, what are you talking about?" And Ahsoka clarifies for the audience that this is one of their first missions. They're on the planet of Ryloth, which is the home world of Hera Syndulla, coincidentally. Ahsoka says she doesn't understand what's going on, and Anakin says, "Well, that's your problem." They both run into battle, Ahsoka pulling out her green lightsaber, which is so damn cool to see in live action. We then see the aftermath of this fight where Ahsoka's coming upon a bunch of clone troopers that are either injured or dead. And Ahsoka really has a different outlook on what the Clone Wars really is. She doesn't like the war. She doesn't want to be fighting. She wants to be a keeper of the peace. Anakin Skywalker, on the other hand, is perfectly okay with this and thinks he needs to train Ahsoka to become a warrior. Anakin explains to Ahsoka that he has to teach her to be a soldier because at this time there's a war going on and they need to win it. While this conversation's happening, you can actually see the iconic character named Captain Rex standing in the background. Ahsoka asks what if she stops fighting, and Anakin says, "Then you will die." Very similar to the way that Darth Vader says it to Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. But it also goes back to Anakin's lesson at the beginning, to live or to die, and to fight is to live. As Anakin runs off into the battle, his silhouette becomes Darth Vader's, as Ahsoka looks on, knowing what happens in the future, realizing that fighting is not always the answer. We then go back to the real world again with Hera and Hu Yang talking in the cockpit of the Ghost. Hu Yang actually knew Anakin Skywalker because he was at the Jedi Temple when Anakin was as well. And when Hera asked what Anakin was like, his response is, intense. Little do they know what's happening in the World Between Worlds right now. We then go back to these Force flashbacks that Ahsoka is having, and she's now on Mandalore during the siege of Mandalore. You can tell because her lightsabers are blue, her outfit has changed, and she's fighting Mandalorians on Mandalore. As much as I would have loved to see Darth Maul in this scene, it still is amazing to see the siege of Mandalore in live action. You actually get to see and hear Captain Rex in this scene, and it's freaking amazing. But Ahsoka looks on as the battle is still going on. Not only does she know that she's going to have to bury every last one of these clones at the end of Clone Wars Season 7, but her whole life has just been war. Anakin comes up behind her and says he doesn't know this battle. Ahsoka explains that it's the Siege of Mandalore and that they had parted ways at this point. He tells her that she did well and she's a warrior now like he trained her to be. And this is where things get interesting. Anakin tells her that Ahsoka, within you will be everything that I am, all the knowledge that I possess, and that she's part of a legacy. But what is this legacy? Ahsoka replies with it's a legacy of death and war, as she of course knows what happens to Anakin after Revenge of the Sith. Anakin gets angry and says, I gave you a choice, live or die, as he pulls out a red lightsaber and his eyes are red. We get another incredible lightsaber sequence between a younger Ahsoka with the blue lightsabers versus Anakin Skywalker with a red one. He just tools around with her and kicks her back into the World Between Worlds as we get an older version of Ahsoka, and the fight continues on the bridge in the World Between Worlds with the white lightsabers and the red one. And when Anakin walks out of the smoke going into the World Between Worlds, you see him flash between Anakin and Darth Vader. Again, although Anakin is Ahsoka's master, she does not want to go down the same path as him. Ahsoka bests Anakin, and before people start to lose their minds, it's Anakin giving her the lesson, ladies and gentlemen. Ahsoka did not beat Anakin. There was so many times that Anakin could have just killed her right where she stood. But Ahsoka disarms Anakin, puts the red lightsaber up to his face, and puts her face very close to the lightsaber as well. Some people think that this is her eyes turning into Sith eyes as well, but I think it's just the red lightsaber reflecting off her weirdly colored eyes. But she deactivates the lightsaber and throws it off the bridge. She says that she chooses to live. Anakin quickly backs down and his eyes go back to normal as he's back to normal. He smiles and says there's hope for you yet, as Ahsoka has learned the lesson. Now I couldn't help but notice that this lesson is eerily similar to the way that Luke Skywalker saves his father. The same way Ahsoka throws the lightsaber down is Luke Skywalker saying, I won't kill you. For he is a Jedi like his father before him, and he will not give in to the hatred and anger the same way that Ahsoka won't either. Ahsoka begins to hear rain falling around her, and the world between worlds begins to disappear along with Anakin. This whole sequence was absolutely perfect, from Hayden Christensen's performance to the lightsaber duels. Just the way that Dave Filoni is leaving this up for the viewer to interpret in a different way is just masterful. Anakin Skywalker has become the father. He's the living embodiment of the light side and the dark and the balance between them. And although this doesn't answer all the questions as to where Anakin Skywalker is during the time of the sequel trilogy, it does give a lot of information. But that's not the end of the episode. Ahsoka wakes up in the water as she gets pulled out by the ghost. She wakes up in her ship as Hu Yang explains what's going on. He mentions that Sabine is gone, but also that Jason Syndulla is the one who helped find her. This is probably foreshadowing possibly Ahsoka Tano being the one to train Jason Syndulla. Hu Yang shows Ahsoka the map that is split in half, and Ahsoka comes out of the ship in white robes. This is Ahsoka the White, ladies and gentlemen. It is official. The epilogue of Star Wars Rebels was retconned in episode 2, and Ahsoka the White is here. She goes out to these ruins, and she uses Force Echo. This is also used by Cal Kestis in the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor game, where she is able to feel through the Force what happened here. She actually hears the conversation between Baylan and Sabine from the last episode and knows that Sabine went with them. Ahsoka looks up into the sky that's usually filled with clouds that now have cleared and sees a bunch of Purrgil. This is very interesting. As soon as Ahsoka comes out of the water, the whole tone of this show shifts. Everything's brighter. She's Ahsoka the White. She's smiling more like the Ahsoka we know and love. But she realizes that the Purrgil are the only way to get to this new galaxy. Back on the Ghost, Hera Syndulla gets a hologram from Mon Mothma. She says that she has to return to Coruscant now, and that she will be put on trial and might lose her title as general. I think this could be foreshadowing a possible appearance, like I said earlier, of Princess Leia on Coruscant in the next episodes to come. But Ahsoka tells Hera that she's found a way to get to this new galaxy, and they fly up into the sky towards the Purrgil. Ahsoka gets out of the ship very similar to the way she did in space in episode 3, and she communicates with the biggest Purrgil there. The New Republic fleet comes out of hyperspace, and Carson Teva has to distract them. Back on the sky on Cetos, the Purrgil opens its mouth for Ahsoka and Hu Yang to fly the ship inside. Now this is Dave Filoni at his finest. He does crazy stuff like this all the time and pushes the limits. I can already hear a bunch of you guys complaining in the comments section that this is stupid or dumb or whatever, but this is the only way that Ahsoka and Hu Yang could make the trip with the Purrgil to this new galaxy. They go into space and the whole pod of Purrgil jet into hyperspace. And that is the end of the episode. Hera Syndulla and Jason stay back while Hu Yang and Ahsoka jet off with the Purrgil to this unknown galaxy. Like I said at the top of the video, the only word to describe this episode is perfection. Last week I gave episode 4 an 11 out of 10 because it was better than every other 10 out of 10 I've ever given. Now this episode is better than last episode, giving it a 12 out of 10. We have broken the scale twice now, Dave Filoni. Calm down. This episode is absolutely incredible. I will be making so many videos breaking down that whole world between worlds sequence with Anakin. But for now, rate this episode out of 10 in the comments section below. What did you think about this episode? Tell me in the comments below. Smash a like on this video if you liked it. Hit subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified every time I post a video. We go live on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So don't miss out on any of that by hitting that subscribe. And if you want more, go check out this video video I just did explaining Marok and why he was smoke and what that means for Thrawn's upcoming army.